Hey, space cadets, and happy Tuesday. This is your Pathfinder pilot, Ryan Duffy speaking. Today we will be chatting with Joe Laurienti, who is the CEO and founder of Ursa Major, a startup building launch-ready propulsion for every sector of aerospace. Ursa Major is presently working on 3 engines, Hadley, Ripley, and Arroway, along with a few other undisclosed products, and you'll hear plenty more about all 3 of those engines in just a moment. Ursa Major says its engines are optimized to offer high performance, diverse capability, and unwavering reliability at a competitive price, and the engines feature an active throttle range, single mission restarts, and custom burn duration. But let's return to Joe. In a past life, he worked as a propulsion engineer at both SpaceX and Blue Origin and attended the University of Southern California. Not too shabby as far as rocket jock resumes go. As Joe told me in a past interview, he started Ursa Major to fill a vacuum created in the American propulsion market by decades of consolidation, reliance on Russian-made engines, and a few other variabilities. Sorry, my dog is scratching at the window. I'm getting really distracted. We will unpack that origin story and the purported market gap, and I will get off my space soapbox so we can bring Joe on here in a second, right after a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by Kepler Communications, a company bringing the internet to space. Kepler is developing the infrastructure to support out-of-this-world communications by creating solutions that allow operators to access data in real time. The Kepler network will keep customers connected to on-orbit assets through optical inter-satellite links, which significantly increase capacity for mission-essential data downlinking to Earth. Kepler's services will expand your mission potential, all while solving current and future gaps in global space communications. To learn more about Kepler and how they are modernizing space communications, visit kepler.space. Again, that's kepler.space. Joe, welcome to Pathfinder.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Parli Italiano un po'? No?
No, unfortunately. Distant family probably still does, but not me.
Okay. Well, it's just a curveball that I wanted to throw at you at the top of the show, but
I'm sure the listeners would love if we went off on Italian for a while, but next time.
Yeah, exactly. The YouTube analytics chart is just going straight down right now. But to get us back on course, apologies to everyone, to you and my listeners in advance. My neighbors in Austin picked this week to fix their roof, and the work is being done maybe 20 feet away from me. So it is terrifying my dog, and I guess my neighbors, I can safely say, like, hate space. They don't want they don't want the show to go on, but the show must go on. And I guess loud machinery noises probably don't really faze you very much.
No, I was going to say, if you get noise from our side, it's probably rocket engines firing. So
okay.
The fueling is mutual.
Yeah. Well, rocket engines are way more exciting than roofing. So I will definitely allow it. At the top of the show, in the intro, which was recorded separately, I ran through the highlights of your resume, but basically just titles. So I think it'd behoove us to dig a little bit deeper there to start with your past gigs. So can you tell listeners what you were working on at SpaceX and Blue Origin?
Yeah. Thanks for going through my resume. That's something I hadn't had to think about in a while, but my entire career has been on the propulsion side of aerospace. So going back to my undergrad, a student group at University of Southern California building and launching rockets. And then I had done research in kind of call it low Reynolds number fluid mechanics, but think aquatic propulsion. And SpaceX and Blue Origin were my real path into kind of commercial rocketry and aerospace. So at SpaceX, I started in the propulsion team on the Dragon capsule. Everything from Draco thrusters and the fluid systems for prop tanks and feed systems to actually under the propulsion team was the thermal management for the Dragon capsule. So don't know the SpaceX org structure today, but back then that was all under Dragon propulsion. Moved from there to the Merlin engine and worked manufacturing and development, mostly with a focus on the main combustion chamber. At Blue Origin, I worked on the BE3 engine program my entire time and really just propulsion development broadly. I got there right when we were building the first engines and stayed up through kind of first flight. So got to see a full development campaign kind of start to finish.
One more thing on the resume, and then we will get into the Ursa Major origin story. You were also involved with the USC Rocket Propulsion lab. I'm reading from my notes just to make sure I get the name right. You were involved with that lab, were you not?
Absolutely. I think all 4 years of my undergrad, I was busy with them.
Right. So we've had a few at this point. We've had a few alumni, yourself, I'm sure, Tim Ellis, and Jordan Noon, who are all in the lab. So it strikes me as like a finishing school for rocketeers and rocket scientists and engineers.
I've tried to get re-involved over the last year or so. The group is still there. They're still creating amazing talent. But yeah, that early, they started the year before I started school. So that early phase of building the first few rockets. And then I left right around the time they launched a rocket that I think went Mach 4 at like 30,000 feet. So it went from just trying to build hobby rockets to really pretty hardcore technology really quickly. So that was definitely Tim and Jordan's years were the really fast stuff. But I think here at Ursa Major, we have maybe 10 employees that came out of that lab. So it was definitely a great way to cut your teeth on rocket propulsion.
Yeah, well, we're moving right along because that was going to be my next impromptu question. But returning to Ursa Major, what convinced you back in 2015 or circa 2015 to step away from Blue Origin and take the proverbial plunge into entrepreneurship? Let's hear the origin story. Yeah,
I mean, I remember very explicitly thinking when I finished up my undergrad. I had done an awesome internship at Northrop Grumman. I had gotten to work in the federal government a little bit, and it just there to me it was like you could go to NASA, I could go into academia. I think I really anticipated my path would be research in academia. I'd gotten to do some really cool fluids research at both USC and Caltech, and a friend from the USC Rocket Propulsion Lab actually had ended up at SpaceX, and kind of dragged me that direction. So it was clear really early on in my career that the tide was changing for aerospace. We were seeing innovation. We were seeing billionaires spend their own personal wealth to kind of advance the industry. So Ursa Major was kind of the result of the timing there. 2015, we were seeing early companies raise venture capital for space, and they all had the same business model. It was try to do what SpaceX is doing, maybe some differentiators around launch class or business model, but really it was let's vertically integrate because SpaceX had done it. And I got really excited at this notion that there has to be a second wave of new space. SpaceX and Blue Origin were first movers. Out of necessity, they had billionaires funding them. The founders used their own personal wealth. They had to vertically integrate. And to me, the exciting question was, what comes next? What's the next exciting piece of this industry evolution? So Ursa Major is kind of the result of the angst around getting called by early venture-backed companies saying, will you come do exactly what you've been doing at SpaceX and Blue Origin? And then really wanting to bring to those companies and others like them some semblance of competition, bring more capable propulsion so that you have overperformers in the market.
Right. And we'll get into this more later on in the show. But I think that also probably, I would imagine, is a advantage for you in recruiting because you can, the pitch to prospective propulsion engineers for you is that it's like hardcore, all propulsion, right? Like you don't have to worry about other parts of the rocket.
That's exactly right. And thanks for kind of reading between the lines there. I usually have to dive 10 steps deeper to really explain that. But we've built such an awesome team. I almost wish I could pull in a few folks from our team when I do podcasts like this, because that really everything we've been able to accomplish is a result of coming to market with a business and technical plan that was extremely challenging. So these engineers that are out there, if young Ryan Duffy's a propulsion engineer and really passionate about rocket engines, there are now, when I was graduating, there were 1 or 2 companies you could go work for. Now there are 15, 20. And if you want to work on the hardest to solve rocket engines, and the mission is not just get to space, it's outperform the market. It's outperform the market on 10 to 20 launch vehicles. And you have, oh yeah, by the way, you have to make one rocket engine that's already challenging enough fit a lot of missions. The engineers that love a challenge love Ursa Major. Right. Would you prefer that I keep saying Ursa Major, or can I shorten it to Ursa? And also, while we're on that point, it may be good to hear the story behind your name. I've done my basic due diligence, and I'm sure most readers or most listeners, it's an old habit, but most listeners will know probably high level the inspiration, but want to hear it from you. Yeah. we can absolutely cut to Ursa. I feel like I did my good work by saying Ursa Major a handful of times up top, so nobody's going to confuse us anymore.
I said it like 4 full times in the intro.
Awesome.
Too, so.
Yeah, we can definitely cut to Ursa. So Ursa Major, really, when I was starting the company, I knew I wanted a space theme. Constellation came to mind, and when you start to look up the really cool constellation names, they've been adopted already by either aerospace companies or programs. So, Orion is out and Sirius is out, and all of the really cool sounding names, but there hadn't been an Ursa Major. So we decided in the early days, just pick it and go with it. And really liked the theme of constellation. The story behind Ursa Major, the Great Bear, I also really like. It's kind of this, there's Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, so it's kind of got this mama bear sentiment to it, and I think it really we've definitely embraced it here to the point of
the bear is great.
I think 3 summers ago. Thanks, yeah, we really love the bear. Going back to the very early days of the company, our original designer for our logo was a friend of a friend, and she's done so much work for us over the years. But when she asked what I wanted as far as color scheme and logo theme, I just said no blue and no swoosh, because every aerospace company has a blue swoosh. I think with the new entrants lately, we've gotten away from that, but we've certainly embraced the bear.
Right. Well, when you Google Ursa Major, y'all are still getting beat by the Ursa. Maybe this is my personalized results, but if it was my personalized results, if anything, the rocket company would come up over the skincare company. But when will space be big enough, or maybe when will space SEO be big enough that Ursa Major beats out the Ursa Major, the rocket propulsion company beats out the skincare company? I, for one, cannot wait for that day.
I think we have some fans of the skincare company here under our roof, but I think that the millions of consumers Googling skincare products probably outnumber the 50 program managers that are Googling rocket engines.
True.
But hopefully, podcasts like this and pieces like yours help get the word out.
There you go. Now turning our focus to the present day, I want to actually establish kind of a baseline. When you and I spoke for the first time last April in a Colorado Springs Holiday Inn, I jotted down the following note. Well, and I wrote this in a story as well. But your first production units were coming off the manufacturing line. At that time, and again, this is last April, you had 8 to 9 commercial customers and roughly 12 government contracts. We'll get into the target markets and customers later on. And then you told me then that you were shooting for an end of year goal for 2022 of 30 engines and a production rate at that time, beginning of this year, of 1 engine a week. So how have those numbers changed from basically almost a year? Yeah, we're closing in on a year.
Ryan, you made me really nervous. I was really hoping you wouldn't say numbers that were above and beyond, just leaps beyond what we're doing today. But no, we've pretty much nailed that. I think we built 35 engines last year, maybe a little more than that.
There you go.
We've built, I've got a whiteboard just above us where I'm sitting right now, but I think we've built 8 engines to date. So we're clocking in a little over 8 engines this year. So we're clocking a little over 1 a week right now.
Okay. And then there are also details. I did not write them down, but you had details, and I didn't write them down because I know that they're going to be way different. At that time, your head count was 200. Approximately ballpark. What's it looking like today?
We're about 270 today.
Okay. And I introduced Hadley, Ripley, and Arroway in the intro, but I barely gave any context. So let's dive in there and hear a little bit more about your product lineup. Now, I also will say that I had taken to calling Arroway last year sneaky because you hadn't actually unveiled it yet. And then you did unveil it. And the inspiration for the name, or the story behind the name, is pretty cool. So I'm just going to give you credit, give y'all credit and a hat tip there, because it's a nod to Dr. Ellie Arroway, who is Jodie Foster's character in Contact.
Thanks. We really take pride, kind of like we've embraced the bear theme. We've really taken pride in naming our engines. It's become kind of a a fun exercise every time a new program comes up. So yeah, the sci-fi theme of Hadley, Ripley, and Arroway, we really like it. Arrow is probably my favorite name as well. So glad you appreciate it.
Yeah. So tell us about these engines and how they all kind of fit together or represent sort of successive step changes in capability and specs and whatnot, and iterative development.
Yeah, so these three engines are really our kind of core product line now. We actually do have a couple more products that are not on the webpage or easily available, but that's probably a separate conversation we can dive in.
It's a secret menu.
Once you go off menu, it's much more difficult. So Hadley is our first product, America's first oxidizer-rich stage combustion engine. Really, the intent there when we started the company was, okay, we've got to provide propulsion to the masses. There's the technical lift of, can you make it as turnkey, as plug and play as possible? I often hear the sentiment that the rocket has to be designed around the engine, and I always love to refute that. Like RL-10 has flown on like 8 different upper stages at this point. So designing the rocket around the engine or the engine around the rocket, come on. But I think Hadley, we really took to heart, it's got to be a market-facing engine, and the performance has to be attractive enough that it's truly market-facing. So we picked oxidizer-rich stage combustion. I always give our early investors credit. Like that was a ridiculous thing to pick in the early days of our company, but we made it work. And now we've built probably close to 80 Hadleys, and like we said up top, about an engine a week right now, accelerating by the end of the year. But shipping into really just a wide swath of opportunities out there. It's part of our business plan that I love, that we can provide engines to very traditional commercial launchers launching out of Cape Canaveral or Vandenberg. Mm-hmm. We can also provide engines to just upper stages. We can provide engines to beyond low Earth orbit, or stages that have a requirement to deorbit to avoid clutter in orbit. Right. We also ship engines into hypersonic test beds and aerial targets, and really just this new kind of trend of modernizing defense, much like we've modernized commercial space over the last couple of decades. So Hadley, I joke, is kind of our Swiss Army knife. It really has a lot of applications, and it's been a great early platform for us. Then, the approach of being an engine-facing company was learn from those platforms. Make sure your next engine isn't just a bigger version of it. Take what you've learned on Hadley and really try to push the industry further. So Ripley is about 10 times the size of Hadley. It's currently in development. We've got an engine. If you hear a lot of noise, it's Ripley, not Hadley. So we've got an engine on the test stand now, and a handful of
my neighbor's roof.
Yeah, it's definitely not roofing. Ripley's a little bit louder. But really the intent of the Ripley program was, one, it's a nice multiple over Hadley, where if you're moving from small launch to medium class launch, above 500 kilograms to LEO, really, all the way up to 1,500 to maybe 3,000 kilograms to LEO, you don't want to fly more than 9 or 10 engines on a stage. So go up in thrust class. And in doing so, we also really pushed for higher performance. Ripley is probably by a pretty wide margin, America's highest performing kerosene engine in history. Just moving away from, the Merlins, the gas generator cycles of the world, into higher pressure oxidizer-rich stage combustion. It's also really taking advantage of what we've learned in the Hadley production line and design for manufacturing. So we should be able to drive cost points down even further from Hadley. And then Arroway is our third. It was our sneaky entrant to the market for really looking at the future of what does space launch need to look like here in the West after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We had been working on an even larger ox kerosene engine, but really when we started to take a market-facing approach, we've got some really cool charts. I'll actually see if I can get them to you, Ryan. I don't think there's anything proprietary. We just kind of did a market survey of where our launch is heading, and the investment in methane from an infrastructure perspective was really attractive. The focus on reusability with our cycle, kerosene can be extremely reusable. We've tested our engines many, many times. So stage combustion gives you some high level of reusability, but that drive towards slightly higher performance, slightly higher pressures, autogenous pressurization of stages really made methane attractive. And we said, instead of just designing a new RD-180, let's look at what the future really needs.
Yeah. So not to nerd out really quickly here and take us on a slight digression, but I have you on the show. I want you to make a prediction. Which will be the first methane-fueled rocket to make it to orbit?
The first one to fly, first one to make orbit. It's tricky. I mean, I was texting with Tim Ellis from Relativity a few weeks back when China was hoping to fly their big methane vehicle.
Yeah.
So I think they got it off the pad, if I'm remembering correctly, but it definitely didn't make orbit.
They got it in the air. Yeah.
Okay. So it definitely didn't make orbit.
It should be exciting because we're now in March. Came out of nowhere, but we are in March. So good luck, have fun. You know, it's like within like a week now, I guess, of us talking. And then I don't know, the Starship rumor mill. I still think I'm not ruling out like end of March yet. But
you're forgetting one, which is Vulcan as well. ULA's Vulcan.
Oh, Vulcan too. Vulcan.
So we've got a bunch of methane launchers. You know what I'll say? I'm not going to predict which one is going to fly first. I just want it to be American. I just want an American launcher to make the first orbital mission with methane. So yeah, I think we've got Terran, Starship, and Vulcan all coming up.
I'll take it. Can you say a little bit more? You know, you've gotten into I suppose the technical specs of these various products. I'd like to hear a little bit more about the technology stack or methods driving your production. And I don't want to be super cliche, and I've already said this. I say this like every 5 shows, or I like draw it out of my guess. But you know, for a lot of these, like for deep tech, like complex engineering, like you know, rocket space products, like a lot of times you can take the view that the factory is the product. So I think, you know, we'd be remiss not to say a little bit about your production processes, to the extent you can talk about things without giving up all the secret sauce.
Yeah, you immediately made my mind go toward, you know, the silicon method of you don't design a chip, you design a factory to build a chip. But I think right now we're still in a phase where I don't want to undersell the importance of the people in this. What we're doing looks more like a Ferrari factory than anything else, where you have 3D printed parts going through inspection, immediately going under the same roof to a machine, and then batches of machine parts going to inventory and assembly. And the automation and kind of the back office, if you will, of our production facility really comes down to 2 things. It's really capable manufacturing engineers that can anticipate the problems that we will face in hardware variability and engine-to-engine build variability. And then it's the software that enables that, so that you can imagine it's still probably the easiest way when you're building a few hundred of something a year to track piece parts and to track issues is paper travelers. You want a note card going around with your hardware. That doesn't build a factory of the future, but it's really good to learn with those systems in place before you go try to automate them. So I definitely don't want to underplay how much investment has gone into training the right people, really recruiting and hiring the right people, and then having them stand up the factory versus immediately out of the gate trying to pick the one ERP that you're going to use for the next 20 years, because you're never going to get it right. Yeah. So make sure you've got the actual underlying factory in place.
Yeah. It's not like lights out factories are like in the cards for you anytime soon. That's like the North Star. But actually, go ahead.
There's really cool tech around the factory. I was just going to say there's cool stuff that we're starting to see unfold. Like there are startups doing basically production tracking, where they've got a stationary camera looking over your factory, and it's all software enabled that'll track parts and watch workflows and know when a station is down. So there are really cool pieces. But if you go tour, again, we like to use Ferrari as an analogy, or Mercedes AMG, because the quantities of parts that they have are actually kind of similar to what we need to get to. They're working in the thousands, not the millions or the tens of millions. And they are very serialized. They're very high quality, high touch labor. So we like to use those factories as an analogy.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to touch a little bit on your raison d'etre. I'm messing it up. It's a French word. I dabble in Italian, so that's my only Romance language specialty. But your reason for existing, and maybe we could reverse engineer your model a bit, again, without revealing trade secrets or the secret sauce. This is something that I wrote about y'all last year, but and we can kind of dig into it and criticize it or update it. But the goal of Ursa Major is to turn and I suppose we actually already have touched on this a little bit, but turn the industry playbook of vertical integration on its head. And rather than building all or most of the vehicle, you are it's more like an evangelizing like horizontal integration and just heads down making liquid rocket engines for 3 verticals: space launch, in space propulsion, and whatever other use cases in space, and then hypersonics. So where does that fall short? Where does it need to be updated? And then we will also talk a little bit, you already said RL10. I want to talk a little bit about some of the engines that you see as competitors or potentially engines you'll be disrupting. But first I want to go through the strategy piece.
I think that's pretty accurate. The piece that I would say it's missing is really that big picture of the why behind this. And, we don't want to tip vertical integration on its head. Yeah, we don't want to tip vertical integration on its head because it's not working. The SpaceX is doing something that's never been done before. Again, this is, to us, the logical next step here of if SpaceX is launching 75 times a year and they are maybe 70% of their payload is Starlink, but they are just launching a huge mass of satellites into orbit. What are the other differentiators out there other than just a backup SpaceX? So that's where we get really excited about partners with new offerings to market. Maybe it's rapid response launch. Maybe it's extremely low cost, small launch. Maybe it's international launch. So we start to get really excited about we can advance their mission by bringing to market a launch vehicle or a new launch capability, or even maybe it's a one-off mission. Some of our partners don't need to use us for every primary propulsion. So, but we should be able to do that in a much faster timeline than if they were starting from scratch. The 3 vehicles we just mentioned on the methane side, Terran, Vulcan, and Starship, have been in work for how many years? And if they had a big methane engine ready to go 5 years ago, I would imagine they'd be flying today.
Yeah. And I guess the historical backdrop, and then we'll take a quick break. Historical backdrop is sort of there's no more independent like pure play propulsion providers. And then of course, with the backdrop of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and like the national security, the implicit national security risks beyond sort of sanctions and phasing out these engines of using Russian-made engines, which unfortunately all have the abbreviation RD, which is my initials, but I digress. But that's the backdrop, right? That you like to talk about, like with regards to why we need. Sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the U.S. has been a net importer of rocket propulsion, which is pretty wild to think about. We've been buying Russian rocket engines since the early 90s. And if you look at really the Western world, both Russia and Ukraine were massive sellers of propulsion technology. So there wasn't a healthy marketplace for propulsion. And that really excited me in the early days of starting Ursa Major. Just there's not a whole lot of offerings. It's us against international kind of outdated tech and Aerojet Rocketdyne. And so I do like to say, the market that created SpaceX here in the US was a large launcher that was really entirely facing the US government, but not very commercial, with no competition. And SpaceX was able to really thrive there. So sounds a little bit like the world of propulsion today here in the US, and Aerojet Rocketdyne being a large provider almost entirely to the government and not a lot of competition. But I think the other piece that really attracted me to this idea, and I think attracts a lot of our talent, is how logical this is technically. I mean, if you are a vertical integrator, it is going to be difficult, if not impossible, to iterate on one of the links in your value chain. If propulsion is the dominating performance metric, it's also the highest risk, you're going to be iterating on your propulsion. SpaceX today is flying Merlin D Block 5, right? If you have a company that is entirely focused on that propulsion, you should be able to iterate as a necessity to bring to market more creative and more capable offerings every year.
We will talk a little bit more about end users and the markets you're targeting, as well as some news that Joe would like to break on the show right after a quick break. But don't go anywhere, because we will be right back. Time for another word from our sponsor, Kepler Communications. Space operators face many downlinking roadblocks today, and they rely on decades-old technology to access critical data. Kepler is solving the downlink bottleneck by providing real-time access to satellite data, optimized latency, and high-speed downlinking capabilities. The company's hybrid network will modernize on-orbit communications with a combination of optical technology, S-band intersatellite links, and a high-speed backhaul link move data more efficiently to Vector. Kepler offers a full stack of solutions with payload technology, spectrum licenses, ground infrastructure, and a satellite constellation with full orbital coverage to satisfy the entire communications requirements of your mission. Check out kepler.space for more information. Again, that's kepler.space. So we are back, and at the beginning of the year, my New Year's resolution as Pathfinder host was to try and be a space scoopmeister or scooplet spice meister as much as I could, and I'm delivering on that today. Ursa Major is announcing today that it will supply several Hadley engines to power the main stage of the Vector R launch vehicle offered or being developed by launch provider Vector. And those engines will be used to demonstrate capabilities for future missions. So I've got a lot of questions, but before we get to those questions, Joe, can you just walk us through this announcement and kind of the backstory, how it came together, and anything else, any other color you would like to add about the announcement?
Yeah,
this partnership.
This was a pretty exciting win for us for a few reasons. Vector, as you could probably tell from public domain, has been pretty stealthy for a little while, and we have a good number of government partners, good number of government programs that we're on right now. And just very coincidentally, one of those government partners was partnering with Vector. And so I don't remember if that was how the introduction came to be or kind of how we first met and started talking. But a big piece of our business here is really to advance missions across the commercial space arena, but also the national security space arena. And so when this partner of ours in the government world came up, and we saw they were working with a company that needed propulsion, we got pretty excited and pretty quickly found a good fit here. So yeah, we were excited to have you break this news.
Right. And so the mission will demonstrate a liquid fueled vehicle and launch using Vector R, which uses the mobile transporting capabilities that we've seen a increased sort of focus and precedence on in recent years. Remotely controlled command and control, subsystem designed for resiliency in adverse conditions, and then reusable launch infrastructure. But walk us through your piece of this, because I think it'll be an illustrative kind of case study for how plug and play, and that's probably an oversimplification to just say plug and play propulsion, but kind
it's
of
like
turnkey propulsion. Yeah,
plug them in.
That's it.
No, we've had a couple of these with commercial partners. As I think you and I probably talked, Ryan, that we have the privilege of sharing some of our partnerships. Some of them we don't get to share in the commercial space, right. But we really love the partnerships where we beat out competition, where we know somebody is trying to rush a new capability to market, or somebody's evaluating a make versus buy decision for propulsion. In this case, Vector ran a process. They interacted with folks on the propulsion side to see how they could best get to market, and we won out. So those are always our favorites because it's a good validation of our technology, of our approach, of our engineering interactions with the company. You'll notice I like to refer to all of these companies as partners because while I like to scoff at the notion that the rocket and the engine have to be designed together, there is a difficult handshake between the rocket and the engine. So
yeah, it is not just as simple as stacking two Legos.
Exactly. So in this case, really what we were excited about is we want to process competition for propulsion. We are already producing these engines. So we have engines coming off of a production line with a home. That's always nice. And hopefully they'll be flying in very short order.
Right. Vector was until recently presumed to be defunct. And I know that you are not and cannot speak for Vector, but they did recently kind of update. They did share an announcement on their Twitter, and you alluded to this, but they have I suppose been in very, very, very stealthy mode for a few years now. But is there anything that you can like when did the conversation start? How do you anticipate this potential kind of partnership growing over the years? Can you speak to any of that?
Yeah, Vector is one of, I think, 3 or 4 new commercial partners we brought on last year, and all of them materialized very quickly. All of these were over the course of, a couple of months from first interaction to getting our engineers sitting in a room, ensuring that the business case closes, the technical case closes. I'm not sure when this process started, but it couldn't have been longer than a few months of interactions. And that's really just a sign of how we have grown as a company in interaction with partners like Vector, where a few years ago, we were probably not the most customer facing. We were probably pretty reluctant to get our engines in the hands of customers just because it's a very different approach than most of our team had been used to. We were used to our customer being the internal house that we developed engines for. So I think we've really grown up in that regard. We have a couple of teams really focused on the partner interactions and everything from trade studies and sharing data back and forth to actually integrating engines and supporting test and flight.
And on the topic of commercial customers, I suppose one similarity is Jim Cantrell used to run Vector. Now he runs another launch company, Phantom, which is developing the Daytona rocket. And I know that is a commercial customer that you can talk about because we've seen a lot of announcements. We've seen deepening ties. I mean, they are buying a shit ton. I don't really know if I can curse on the podcast. It's my own podcast. So
I think the contract says that.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us a little bit about that experience and that partnership, because that's a lot of Hadleys.
Yeah, that one was that was a couple of years ago that really formed. So maybe it wasn't the quick, few months turn that we had last year with a couple of partners, but that was a fun one for us because there was a process run, but it wasn't really Ursa Major against other propulsion. It was more Ursa Major versus do we raise more capital and build engines internally. So we really liked to advertise that win because it was a good validation of not just our tech versus others' tech, but our model of a company like Phantom should be able to fly much more quickly buying engines from us than if they were to go raise an extra $100 million and develop engines internally. So, I think it was in public domain. We had done a an upper stage test at the end of last year on their vehicle. That was really exciting. I think that's one of 5 integrated stage tests that we have done to date. So another kind of cool validation that engines can work with multiple stages.
Right. And then what, if anything, before we move on here, we've talked about your target markets. What other companies, you are working, you work with national security and government customers. I know you can't talk about this, so I'm not even going to ask, but are there any other customers that you can reveal to listeners, that you're working with?
We can share. We can share a little bit on the national security side. Air Force has been an awesome partner. We've done a few programs with different offices out of the Air Force. Everything from hypersonic test beds, kind of entirely funded by AFRL, to very specific space and hypersonic overlap. Where is the line drawn on a single engine that can do both? So we've gotten to do some really cool programs with the U.S. government. But we have some. I know another publicly disclosable partner of ours is Stratolaunch, and we have some really big milestones coming up with them in the hypersonic flight arena. So look out for that here pretty soon. And then we've got a handful of other customers that we should be either doing joint press with or we should be announcing pretty soon. Those are everything from us replacing existing engines to us completely helping them re-architect a vehicle. So we've got some really exciting ones coming up.
All right. Well, I will stay tuned, as will everyone listening to this. I want to run through some typical kind of startup questions, and then I want to make sure we get to Max Q, my new segment, 2023, which is all the hard questions that I haven't asked or didn't have a home in earlier segments.
Awesome.
And it's also very, very fitting to do Max Q with you. But on startup, I think on recruiting, we have touched on what the pitch would be and why it's such a compelling pitch to folks who are working at, the big two, or at these rocket labs, or at other kind of new space companies, or at the prime contractors. When we last spoke last year, you had mentioned that around 70% of your of your technical team had stints or previously worked at SpaceX and Blue. Has that numerator kind of held steady?
I could probably pull up the data pretty quickly. I did a poll pretty recently within our engineering team. Our engineering team's 130 folks or so. and about 60 were SpaceX or Blue specifically. But I think really what we tried to figure out was how many of them came from new space specifically. And that was an even higher number, as you can imagine. It is, I think maybe 80 out of the 130 had worked at new space companies. So that was pretty cool to see. Like I said, when I was finishing up college, you can go to work at SpaceX. Blue Origin was super small and kind of stealthy at the time, but you could go work at SpaceX or NASA pretty much. So it's pretty cool to see how many have cut their teeth or gained experience at a Virgin Orbit or Virgin Galactic or a Relativity. So it's been pretty awesome.
Right. I think what's so special about all of the companies is even when you're like an intern, you get your hands on hardware. That is so unlike kind of any other industry, almost any other industry, I would imagine. But I'm not an engineer, so what do I know?
I mean, I always like to highlight, our CTO, Brad Appel, he was a manager on the Merlin program, kind of from first Falcon 9 1.1 flights up through having to figure out how to make it reusable, kind of all the algorithms around bringing back and landing the thing, boost back and land, and then human rating it. These things that should be 20-year programs, he had to do 3 of them within 10 years of his career. So I always like to highlight that there's been this window of talent creation and knowledge creation that's pretty unprecedented. And if you can grab the right talent and organize them and excite them in the right way, you should be able to do some pretty special things.
Right. What are your recruiting targets for the next 18 to 24 months look like? Headcount growth.
We've got some growth to happen this year, mostly on the production side, kind of to the point we were touching on. The people there are really important. So we've got a lot of engineering kind of balls in the air, if you will, around different programs and different offerings. So the engineering team will definitely grow. But I think a lot of our focus here is on minimizing the recurring engineering or sustaining engineering on the Hadley program. So you can start to pull heads off of that toward Ripley and then toward Arroway. So it's kind of this phasing of programs that we're focused on this year. And the talent that is needed to go grow the production line is a new challenge versus architecting new rocket engines. So we're pretty excited to face it this year.
Right. So we're running up against time. I would normally ask about R&D, but I think we've kind of already touched on it with like Arroway and some of the other products you alluded to, so we can gloss over that. But this next question wraps up recruiting, R&D, production, some of those. There's through line. And you raised $85 million in a Series C funding December 2021, or at least that's when it was announced. Will you need to raise again soon? And what's the to the extent you can talk about it at all, what's like the revenue mix and how much is coming in the door? I'm not asking you how many dollars, but just what that looks like and how you expect that to ramp over the next few years.
So our model is unique in that we were pretty early to revenue. We're a product company. We're not a service company. We don't have to wait for FAA approval to fly to generate our first dollars of revenue. So we've been growing pretty aggressively on engine deliveries and new partners in the door. So our revenue has grown pretty aggressively. Really, I say 2022 is our go-to-market year because we were really producing engines, but we had been delivering prototype engines and doing stage testing prior to that. So our revenue's been growing at a triple-digit rate the last couple of years and going into this year and next year as well. But on the financing side, we in the past have always raised capital for R&D. We raised money to go try to make Hadley a prototype and then to make Hadley a more production-facing engine and to get Ripley into the market. That's really changed with our last raise. A lot of the proceeds from our Series C were intended to grow our factory, grow the team, put all the building blocks in place so that we can start to become a much higher cash flow company. And that's been pretty successful. So we've got some great investors behind us. I think that the number of investors that are excited about space and getting new hypotheses in place and becoming better fits for Ursa is growing every day. So you will definitely see news about us raising money in the future. But the focus has been to try to capitalize on that balance of raising capital from the right investors and generating pretty attractive cash flow through delivering products.
All right, Max Q. What reason is there to be bullish on small launch, which I think is like the primary segment you're serving today?
I'm bullish more so than usual lately with the announcement of NSSL's new kind of lane 1 and lane 2 procurement strategy. So the National Security Space Launch, Space Force is kind of one big contract that they drop every few years. Last time was just awarded to ULA and SpaceX. They've now really modernized their procurement, much like everyone in DoD is attempting to do. So they're allowing new launchers to come into the fold, not just on day one, but after the contract is awarded. So, you know, a relativity who hasn't flown yet can go win a national security space launch, something that would have been completely impossible in the last cycle. So for us with engines on, you know, a dozen launchers, that's pretty exciting. And then really for small launch specifically, I think what we're seeing here is still the need for, I like to say that the market is saturated with entrants. It is not saturated with actual providers of launch capabilities. So
orbital class. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that we are still in the beginning days. While the market has changed dramatically over the last 5 years, it hasn't changed all that much. It feels like it has, but we're not flying small launchers on a monthly basis or a weekly basis like everyone predicted we would be in 2023.
Right. So how many launch companies do you think in the long run that can have viable business models?
I think here in the US, we will see a handful. And by that, I mean somewhere between 5 and 15. I don't, those are rough numbers, but really what we're going to see is a shakeout of offerings really delineated by either niches and capability. So super small rapid response launch with a focus on national security. That'll be a niche that somebody will go fill. Then we will have, you know, air launch where you don't need a launch pad, Virgin Orbit's kind of specialty. But I think the really important piece that nobody talks about very much is the delineation by partnership. So SpaceX's Starlink is really exciting to us in the launch industry because it's creating competition between SpaceX and their former customers. Starlink didn't exist, Kuiper would be flying on Falcon 9s right now. So I think that gets really exciting when you say which launchers are going to have key partnerships that need to launch a high volume and how many of those will there be? So yeah, a handful of capable launchers in the US. And then I'll tack on to that, you know, the international market's going to get really exciting. Sovereign space is going to be more important than ever.
Yeah, sovereign,
and we're going to see,
absolutely.
We're going to see Europe try to catch up. We're going to see Southeast Asia try to catch up. China just put new news forward on their 13,000 satellite mega constellation. So yeah, launch isn't going anywhere.
Yeah, totally. Last question. I think this fits well in MaxQ, and this was sent over at the beginning of the show from Mo, who works with me at Payload. How do you view the Aerojet Rocketdyne acquisition, and what does it mean for Ursa? Is $4.7 billion a ceiling for a company building engines? And how do you see Ursa becoming more valuable than that number?
That's a funny way to phrase it. Is 4.7 billion a ceiling? I mean, 4.7 billion is probably the ceiling for, you know, a 50-year-old company with outdated products that's been slowing growth or shrinking year over year. But for us, the Ursa to Aerojet analogy is like Tesla to incumbent car makers analogy, just that we're offering something so different and so unique, and the timing couldn't be better. I think we saw that the Aerojet acquisition was going to be inevitable, really back after the announcement of the Lockheed attempted acquisition. So for us, it's more a question of what products do we have to roadmap? How do we get them to market faster? And how can we service some of the really important markets that are being underserved right now? So that's where national security and defense gets really exciting. Okay. All right.
Well, that will do it for MaxQ today. But I mean, we'll have to do a round 2 in a year or two. And talk too about, you know, the facility in Colorado where you're doing all of this, like side by side. I think that's really interesting. Not under one roof, right? But like co-located.
Walking distance.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's all the technical, like the throttlability. I butchered the pronunciation of that. Single mission restarts, all of that with the actual engines. But before we go, I think the one rapid rocket fire question that I would want to ask you is your hottest take on the future of the space industry.
That's tough. Hottest take. I think the availability and impact of hobby aerospace is probably completely underappreciated, in that this notion of space pirates starts to become very real when individuals have the access and low cost capability to put things at an altitude that could impact satellites and create more space debris and all of that. So I think we're going to see a massive shift in kind of hobby aerospace here in the next 5 years.
I love that. And let's sync offline in a couple months about that. That sounds fascinating.
Absolutely.
That is all the time we have. Thanks so much, Joe. Appreciate you coming on the show and taking all these questions, and talk soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan, and thanks for watching the clock. I would have kept going, so appreciate it.
Of course, that's my job. Got to stay on top of it.
Of course.
Okay, Space Cadets, that is it for Pathfinder 0038. Pathfinder is a production of Payload. We publish every Tuesday, and the podcast is produced by Peter Jean. If you like what you heard, leave us a rating and review wherever you're listening to this. It really helps move the needle. And better yet, if you really like what you heard, refer a friend, a family member, or a space-inclined coworker to the podcast to help spread the word. Next week, we will be talking with Evan Rogers, who is the CEO and founder of True Anomaly, which is up to very interesting things in military space, and has played its cards pretty close to the vest until recently. So I'm really excited for that episode. But until then, that is all she wrote. I'm Ryan Duffy signing off, and I will see you back here next week.